Hi, welcome back. My name is Terry Morgan, and today we will be discussing the data types that are used within the Integrate.io ETL platform. Beginning here inside our knowledge base, we will discuss each of these data types. So the first four on this chart are numeric data types. Int and long are both whole numbers. You can see that the difference here is that an integer holds 32 bits of data, whereas a long holds 64 bits. So you can write much larger numbers with a long data type. Likewise, float and double have a similar relationship, except that these are numbers that can contain parts of numbers. So both of these data types will include decimals, but likewise, a float contains 32 bits of data and a double can contain up to 64. Next is our char array. Now, this is the string data type that we use in the platform. Any sort of string can be defined, and then you just need to surround that string with single quotes. Next, binary. We use a byte array for this binary data type. And following that, Boolean. So there are two values in a Boolean, true or false. And that doesn't matter whether it's capitalized or lowercase. Just don't surround those values with single quotes, or they'll be read in as strings. After Boolean comes datetime. Now, this is a specific data type, and you'll see here this example of the format of this timestamp. It includes date and time data, and is a specific data type itself. So certainly there are other types of timestamps. They'll come in all different formats. Anything that isn't a datetime data type will be read in as a string data type. Now, you can leave it as that is, or you can convert it into a datetime data type if you prefer in a follow-up transformation. Now, the last three data types in this chart are complex data types. So tuple, bag. Tuple and bag have kind of an interesting relationship. So a tuple is an ordered set of fields. A bag is a collection of tuples. So a simple way to think about this, you might think of a nicely formatted but unsorted CSV. Now, the fields or the columns in that CSV, you might refer to those as the first field or the third field or the last field. And those designations all have meaning because those fields have a very particular order. That is like a tuple. A tuple has a particular order. Now, the rows in that CSV, on the other hand, can be rearranged. They can be sorted in ascending or descending order. None of that really matters. That the data in each of those rows is unchanged, whether it's the first row or the last row. That is like a bag. A bag isn't significant, its order. One other thing that you might think of when you think of a bag is that it's akin to an array, if you're familiar with arrays from a programming language. Then the last data type on this list is a map. A map is also akin to a JSON object. So it is going to be a set of key value pairs. You can think of the key as really the column name, and then the value in that given column for that particular record. Now, in order to further understand how we use these data types in Integrate.io, we'll come over here to a package where I've set up two different data source components. On the left-hand side is the database. So we'll take a look in the third step where it interprets the schema of this table. Now you can see on the right-hand side are fields, field names, as well as the type, and this is the data type. You can also see down below a preview of that data. So order ID is being read in by this component. It's being automatically recognized as an integer. Then the next three name fields are all strings. Then we have three different kind of amount fields that are all being read in as floats. Then we have two timestamp fields, two date fields. The order date, which is a date time data type, and the due date, which is a string data type. And if you come down and look at it, you can see this is the date time. It has a date. It has time data in it. And then there's the due date. And the due date is not in that same format, but it's identifiably definitely a date, but it's being read in as a string. So I can leave these field data types as they are, or I might decide, for instance, to transform them and standardize either towards the date time data type or towards the custom string so that they're both the same. I will show you how to do that in just a couple minutes. But in the meantime, let's pause and take a look at this API source component. Because we weren't able to see in that database component some of our complex data types. However, this API is returning JSON data, which will include our maps and bags data types. So you can see we come down here, and for instance, this location field is being read in as a map data type, and the monitors field is being read in as a bag. So if I come down, I can open the first record in this data set, and if I come to location, I can expand that field. And you can see here that this data type, that it starts with a curly brace, and that there are two key value pairs. There's the latitude and the value, and the longitude and the value. And this is a map data type. Now look at the monitors. You can see that the value of monitors is surrounded by square brackets. So if I open that bag, then I can see that inside the square brackets are actually more map data types. So if I open one of those, you can see that it is a bag full of maps, and the maps have, it looks like, maybe 8 or 9 key value pairs within them. Okay. Now, when we come over here and take a look, for instance, at this type drop-down menu, this station ID is being read in as a long data type. I can leave that as is. Maybe that's the way I want it. Maybe I would prefer to deal with it. Maybe I have transformations I want to do and I need it to be in a different data type. For instance, I might decide it would be easier for me to handle it as a string. And so I can make that change here. Or I could also move on to a subsequent transformation component and make it there. Let's go ahead and close this component and take a look at what that would look like. So after our API, let's add a select component. And I'll open this up and I'll autofill. So certainly I mentioned, this station ID. This was the long data type. If I wanted to turn it into a string data type inside this component, I would be able to do that. Here in this data type folder are the what is it? 7, 8, different simple data types. And I can explicitly cast this field by placing the name of the data type that I want to cast it to inside of parentheses in front of the field name. So I can open my parenthesis, click on char array, and close it. And then this will explicitly cast that long data type to a string. So I could do it in the API component, or I could do this here. Let's say I want to do it here. I'm going to save that. Now, let's also maybe for a moment talk about this location field. So this was that map data type. It had latitude and longitude within it. So right now it's a nested data type. Maybe I want to break out the latitude and longitude into columns of their own in this data set before I write it into my target destination. Now, right now, location is a map data type. And if I want to parse those fields out, those keys, then I would use this syntax of a number sign, single quote, and then the name of the first key, which would be latitude. And I could save that. And then when this component executes, I will now have, and I'm going to rename that column over here, it's the location latitude. And I could do the same thing to parse out the longitude as well. Now, alternatively, if I wanted to parse that in a different way, let me open this expression editor. Maybe I wanted to use this JSON extract scalar function. So they're both two different ways of parsing out the keys within a map or a JSON object. So I showed you the first one. It requires that location, that field be a map in order to use this syntax. So if instead of parsing it this way from a map, I wanted to use, for instance, this JSON extract scalar, then I need for that location field, instead of being a map data type, I need it to be a JSON string. As you can see here in the syntax line, that field needs to be a JSON string. So instead of doing this, I might come in here, and now I need to make it a string. And so I would cast it just like I did that last field. I would put char array inside of single quotes, or not single quotes, but parentheses. And then I would be able to use this function. So I put the function name at the beginning, and then I would open my parenthesis, and now I'm passing in a location, and I've changed it to a char array. Now I could also change this to a string or a char array by going back into that API component and selecting string from the drop-down menu. Both are options. But if I want to use this function, it does need to be a string, and then I define the JSON path to that key. So I need single quotes, and then if we look at that example again, it's a $ and a period, and then the key name. So I have my single quotes, $ period, and then this is where I would put the key name in order to parse it out and close my parentheses. So these are two different ways that you might parse out that nested field of latitude. Depends on the two different ways require two different data types. So this is one reason why you might want, for instance, a string instead of a map or a map instead of a string. Now, likewise, we talked about those two different timestamps in our database. So another way that we might want to standardize those might also use a select component. So let's come in here. Our order date, if you remember, this was the datetime field, and the due date was the custom field. That was that custom string field. So, for instance, maybe I want to make the due date a datetime just like the order date is. So if I open the expression editor, right now it's a string, and I would like to cast it to a datetime. Now, this toDate function, actually what I want is the toDate custom formats, because this is going to allow me to take this string data type, and you can see it's a custom string, and then I put the format of this particular timestamp as the second argument. So I'm going to put my cursor in front of due date. Then I will click on the name of that function and open my parentheses. So this is my, as you saw in here, this is the due date as my custom string. And I'm going to put a comma. And now this is where I can tell the component what format this date string is in. And so it was in month, and then there was a slash and a 2-digit day and a slash and a 4-digit year. And then I would close my parenthesis. And then when this function executes, we'll take that custom string, which is in this format, and it will convert it into a date-time data type so that they're the same. Now, if I wanted to go the other way, I could have used this toString function on the datetime field and converted the datetime into a custom string just like this one. So I could standardize it in either way. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, and please come back next time for the next video.